Kevin Purcell here again. Welcome to another questions and answers session here on EPP Group social media. Today we are going to speak to the Irish EPP Group MEP, Maria Walsh, about all things mental health. I see her name has popped up there, so we'll get going.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad now at all. The sunshine is helping me, and it's good to keep a positive attitude when the sun is shining as well. So it's no complaints here. So
I'm delighted to see mental health being discussed from our group, and then between myself and yourself. I know we're both Irish, but I hope our chat will resonate with not just Irish people connected, but throughout the European Union, because we've talked about mental health before for many other interviews. So I'm delighted now we get to do it in specifically looking at mental health. It's great.
Let's hope it's not too Irish for people.
Yeah, I promise.
Just to welcome everyone, first of all, we're here with the Irish EPP Group MEP, Maria Walsh, and we're talking about mental health during the COVID-19 pandemic. Such an important topic given what's happening with the lockdowns and with isolation and with anxiety and worry. So first of all, Maria, I know you're back in Mayo and on the west of Ireland. How have things been for you over the last few months?
Yeah, it's been challenging in certain days and parts of weeks. When I left Brussels on March 14th, I think I said to my senior advisor Neve, I said I'll be back in 2 weeks, never imagining we would be still within the pandemic and the COVID protection barriers that we have. I'm back with my folks, and as you said, on the west coast of Ireland. So shout out to any independent adults who have gone back into the home to make sure their role is still the same and not just my parents sometimes forget, as I'm sure many that I've lived out there out in the world for a couple of years on my own. So that adjustment has been great, but still a struggle. Different challenges. I live in a very rural area on the west coast of Ireland, so I'm just in a county called Mayo. If you look left, you see fields. If you look right, you see fields. So what we have in Ireland, and I know many other EU countries that also had it in terms of travel restrictions. Here in Ireland, it's a 5K. It was a 2K limit first, and then a 5 kilometer limit. 5 kilometers still not getting me to any urban areas, but we're still getting out and trying to be active. From a working perspective, my team and I have quickly adapted into how to continue to connect. We had the office and the open space and the dialogue, and you get so comfortable within that. Whereas remote working, you have to really extend yourself in terms of communication, constantly looking at and picking up little moments that your team might be struggling with, or they might hear it in your voice and you're just trying to follow up and make it work. But in terms of work itself as an MEP, it hasn't gotten quiet. It has only amplified in terms of video conferencing and connecting with our constituents in many different ways. And as you and I have discussed before, we're voting remotely, which allows us to do our job, to push through funding and to policy change when we can, so that there's nothing being held up on the Parliament side. And then I guess on a personal level, there's days where I get out and I go for walks because it's really important for my own mental health. We might have busy days and you're stuck to your computer screen, and just taking an excuse to get out into what I just described as having fields and fresh air. And I was never great at that before this, and I certainly am appreciating it a lot more now.
And just you mentioned your constituents. I know your constituency is quite vast, and as you say, a lot of rural areas. A lot of elderly people might be on their own as well, and we spoke before about how they might be a bit less tech savvy than us. They can't exactly go on Zoom and have a Zoom party with their friends. It's very isolating for them.
Absolutely. And it's we talk about, well, we're humans, so we build off and we take input, and we exert energy our lives are surrounded around people. And when you take that away from someone, regardless of whatever age, it becomes more difficult. But now we're asking an older generation our best efforts to protect them. We're asking them to, what we say in Ireland, cocoon. So individuals over 70, in case any other person is listening who's never heard of cocooning term before, over 70 with an underlying health condition, just to remain in their home and have items delivered to them versus going out into what could potentially be COVID areas. And you're stripping away certain aspects of their lives. Many people within my area are doing so in a very, they're in rural Ireland in particular. They go to the post office or the grocery store, and that's their social outing. They mix and meet with their family members or their grandkids, and that is an extension of their new lives, perhaps in retirement or just welcoming family members, and that has had to stop. So that's extremely difficult. Lack of infrastructure also has a difficulty. You said about tech savvy citizens, regardless of whatever age is, if you don't have a strong Wi-Fi connection coming into your house, that makes it even more difficult. And then for those that are living in remote areas where they might not have a car, and again, they rely on lifts from other neighbors to bring them in, and that can't happen because of COVID. But what is really significant, and I hope you guys are picking up on this too across the European Union, is this empathetic arm that we're seeing now, that volunteerism that the Irish people are known for, but the world over is known for it also. And you see an impact in that I know I'm a part of a volunteer group here that delivers groceries and medicines to citizens who perhaps have COVID or are in that cocooning age and can't get out. And you have the wave from the window and just making sure there's some sort of connection, that's some sort of lifeline. But for those citizens, if they're watching, I'm asking you just to use technology to the best of your abilities, make the FaceTimes and the phone calls or the texts. If you do have a laptop, continues to log into video conferencing or connection, that using this time to have to get out, garden, paint, do whatever it is that gives you that extension until we fight and we get a vaccine and the new normal comes back into our lives.
And of course, it's difficult for everyone in different ways. I mean, we have young people who can't go meet their friends. We have mums and dads trying to teach kids and work at the same time, which is very difficult, I can imagine. So, I mean, different factors, it's affecting us all in different ways.
Yeah, and I mean, anybody watching here can remember if they were fortunate to be homeschooled or be in a traditional schooling sense from any age, can remember the impact that your friends would have on your lives, or a certain teacher that really inspired you. Or for me, it was the structure around going to school, knowing that I had an accountability to be at school at a certain time. I had an accountability to show up for my teammates where I played sports. And when that all of a sudden stops, the wanting and the learning still needs to develop. And that's from an older side. And then you have a younger side that, I have a little nephew, and my sister and her husband lives in Perth, Australia. And, obviously the daycares were shut there. But that aspect of learning with other school kids, developing the interpersonal skills that you develop at that age, that's extremely trying and complex when COVID comes in and you have something like we have now where everything is just on hold. And then in Ireland, we have the saying, the fear of missing out. I think that's very true for any person, but particularly our young people, our teenagers who want to get back and move and meet friends and go about their youthful ways as we did many years ago. I guess I'm a little bit of a half half glass full kind of gal when it comes to this in terms of what can we do, and similar to what I had said about our older citizens, it's so important that we're using technology in the right ways, feeding ourselves in a positive manner, get in touch with friends that keep us grounded, but also feel connected with it, and open up the conversations that it's absolutely okay for any person, but in particular our younger people, not to feel okay on certain given days. This is a pandemic, and we need to be open to the fact that there's great days, there's difficult days, but there's a lot of supports around. I know from Ireland, but I know in the European Union, that we need to just tap into and again reiterate the message: it's okay not to feel okay.
For those who've joined, we're talking mental health with Maria Walsh MEP, and you're welcome to write any questions you wish here. So we'll ask Maria if you stick a question there. Maria, I know on your Twitter you've been giving some top tips as well on a sort of a daily basis to keep your mind healthy. Maybe you can talk us through some of them.
Yeah, couple, and I wanted to make sure I wrote them down so I didn't get the gift of the Irish chat and go off topic. But for me, even as a parliamentarian, the news is so overwhelming at times. And often we have the impact of fake news, particularly on social media websites like we're on now, Instagram. So it's important that you just limit yourself. Perhaps it's once or twice a day, morning and evening, or perhaps it's only once a day in the afternoon that you're getting as much information about COVID, and then you park it and you leave it there and you continue on, because again, that drain is hard for me, I know. So I have to limit myself on days where I know I just don't have the energy or the mindset, and that you slip down into a really heavy day of like, are we actually going to get out of this? And we are, but just to limit yourself there. We also have the wonderful words of social media, and I just mentioned there in terms of intake of news. So for me, I limit myself a little bit. I unfollow, and I did so quite quickly into COVID-19 pandemic. Just those that weren't feeding my soul or my energy or my mindset correctly. And get outdoors, walk around if you can do so in a safe manner. Wear your masks if it's in a highly populated area. Keep an eye. Make sure you have gloves with you if you're moving in a more urban area also, or going to a supermarket perhaps in rural areas. But just be mindful of yourself and the fact that certain days will be more difficult. And again, it's very simplistic when you come to mental health. Just check it in. How is this feeding me? Do I feel good in this? Is there any supports that I can be giving myself right now? And go out and get them for yourself, or utilize the links that you have around you to support you.
We know it's a big issue in the European Union, and mental ill health affects more than 1 in 6 people in the EU. Mm-hmm. I mean, on an EU level, what can be done to address this? I mean, I know you're looking for a strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest with you, this time last year, or definitely when the campaign for European Parliament in 2019 kicked off, one of the key things I discussed was mental health. And I'm not the only MEP that discussed it, particularly in the EPP group and across all parties. And that's significant. And I say that because mental health, there's a common thread to this. It has to feed into everything we do, in every decision making we are doing at a council level, at a commission level, and of course in the Parliament. It's so important that we understand that mental health has to be a competency of the European Union. Otherwise, me and you are going to be discussing this in 5 years' time to see where we've come. Now, there's a couple of great things that are within our reach now in this mandate, and something that I feel extremely positive that we can really drive home: mental health being a competency in the next years. One being our Commissioner for Health, Stella Kyriakides, and I want to apologize to anybody for my pronunciations. I'm still trying to get those right. But she's a child psychologist by profession. I had a conversation with her in Strasbourg a number of months back, and what was so enriching from that conversation was the fact that she got it. She understands that mental health has to be a competency. We discussed a European Year of Good Mental Health, which would put mental health on to the podium it deserves, and to showcase, to talk about, give visibility to other member states and to our citizens, and really to start working on destigmatizing mental health. Because once we start doing that, and once we start really calling out mental health for what it is, each and every one of us has it, you begin to open up people's minds and their offices, as well as their homes and their communities, to actually talking about and looking at mental health supports on the ground. From a legislation part, in terms of funding, in terms of policy work, I sit on the employment committee, that is EMPL in short, and we're looking at work-life balance, we're looking at remote working, again, all of those aspects that feed into mental health supports for our citizens. Now, everything I touch within the EPP group, as well as in my committees, my common thread is mental health. So how can we fit in mental health in everything? And again, across all parties, really driving home that message that if we don't protect our citizens at their very core, then we can't develop the European Union in the best way possible in that solidarity pact, because we won't be bringing every citizen with us. And finally, your question was around competency. It has to become a competency, and in order for our council, our commission, and our parliamentarians to take it seriously. And you gave the statistic of 1 in every 6. You look at the GDP, that's 4% of our GDP goes to mental health supports. But can you imagine if a citizen, be it in the west coast of Ireland or the far east of the European Union, far north or south, is able to get up and go outside into their community, into their workplace, into their school, and feel that they can bring their whole selves to their places, because their mental health is supported at the EU level. That's.
And do you think this pandemic gives that whole idea and that call for a strategy a lot more urgency?
Yeah, absolutely. I think now more than ever, we're at that crossroads. We're at the crossroads of, to quote Robert Frost, an Irishman's favorite point, 2 roads diverged in the yellow wood. Now we're here. Now we have an opportunity as citizens, as parliamentarians, as leaders around the negotiation table, to look at, to develop, to fund. We have the political will, because COVID is forcing us to really look at our citizens as a whole. And you cannot keep driving an economic message without bringing the social message alongside. It has to work in cohesion with that. And that's where mental health fits in. That's our bridge between both.
Just to get to some questions that were sent in. First one is, looks like a student. 3rd level education is up in the air. I don't know if I will be able to finish my degree because of it. Obviously, that person sounds pretty anxious about it. What to do?
Absolutely. I don't know where the person is residing.
It doesn't say, but
okay. Well, in the Irish standpoint, it's if the person is residing in Ireland. I know universities and 3rd levels are quickly trying to work and get students back as quickly as possible. I know our Minister for Education is certainly driving that message. From a European Union side, I know Commissioner Gabrielle is looking at the research, innovation, and the higher education aspect too. If they want to either drop me a DM, I can quickly come back to them around whatever country they're from and get the national front for them. But outside of all of that, and you had pointed out there, Kevin, there's a sense of anxiety and upset and confusion about next steps. Long story short, and I'm not speaking at lib here, but I'm certainly speaking with passion, that we have a responsibility as leaders to get our younger people back into their education, into their work, and into career development as quickly as possible. And as a European Union standpoint, we stand for opportunity and solidarity and creating the best for our citizens. And no doubt where that person is residing, that's the same at national level as it is at European level.
Yeah, I think you covered the next 2 questions. The next one is education again, and the lack of certainty. Obviously, it's something on a lot of people's minds. Someone's mentioning that the Irish exams would have been on tomorrow. Obviously, they've been cancelled now.
Yeah.
You talked about EU competency, mental health touching every part of our lives, and talked us through what you'd like to see changed there. Someone asked earlier here, what do you think the general impact will be, this whole pandemic, on mental health?
I think what COVID has done has expedited issues that were undetected or not talked about for a long time. I think what COVID has brought to the forefront is that our citizens need support, and we as parliamentarians need support. Every person needs help, and they need to understand that having any sort of mental health issue is not a deterrent for them to grow and develop within their communities. And again, back to what I said a couple of moments ago around, we now have a moment to reimagine our society of what we want it to look like. We see waves of change and vocalization of change, and rightly so, coming from the US right now. We see waves of issues coming from the UK and other parts of the world. And as a European Union, we can absolutely pave the way here in making sure our citizens feel inclusive and a part of our society. And we now have an opportunity to create that society for the better. But I'd be nervous. In Ireland here, funerals and the passing of a loved one is quite a traditional moment for the community, and we have people here, unfortunately, losing their lives because of this pandemic, be it our healthcare workers or community members that have contacted COVID-19, and their families aren't supported in the way, they're not supported in the way. And now we really have to work and make sure our strategy around protecting those citizens are there. Those that feel anxious, like that student who asked there about going back into a third level education or a job, and perhaps are really conscious of either having COVID and sharing it, or contacting COVID and bringing it back. So there's even a stigma around that we have to look at. And then we talk about our younger people and around final year exams and that next transition step. We've a lot of different aspects here that we need to show the political will. We need to put funding in where it's needed, and that's in mental health. And we need to allow the experts to do their job. I am by no means a mental health expert. I'm just very passionate about talking about something that directly affects me, my family members, my community members. Hell, that's the reason why I put my hand up and got involved, because I didn't think it was being discussed at the level I wanted to. So we need to start pulling on the strings here. Again, political will, get funding in place to support our citizens quickly and in remote as well as urban areas right throughout the European Union, and get the experts in to really build that strategy that we need.
Someone mentioned that, and as you say, you're not a mental health expert, but they're talking about family tensions in the house and how difficult it can be, especially when you can't leave the house. Is there any advice?
Oh, if I wish I had detailed advice to share here, but on a daily basis, I go through the same things when not negative tensions, but certainly a different role between my parents and myself. But removing myself from that answer there, wherever that person is, again, there's online resources to talk about or to call throughout the European Union. And perhaps I'll share them with the EPP group as well as my own social media platform, just to put those numbers up that's what they're there for. The experts are there to talk you through how to have proper conversations or more supportive conversations with family members if there is tension. I know from an LGBTQI standpoint, there has been previous online chats that I've gone through where members of the rainbow community have gone home and they might not be out in terms of their own family members, and then they feel that they're hiding themselves for an extended period of time. Again, use the resources, the online the mental health alliances that we have. I'll get in touch with them right after this to make sure they have numbers up there too. So you're being fed true, factual, real life information of where to go to support versus not feeling supported.
Yeah, we'll definitely try and maybe get a link to that and put it in the comments once the video is up. Someone has a pretty basic question. They want to know what committees you're in.
Oh, yeah, great. One question that I can answer. I am on EMPL, which is my main committee, which is employment. I'm also on LIBE, which is around civil liberties, justice and home affairs. And then I'm on I'm a substitute on the PESH committee, which is fisheries. I'm also a vice chair on the LGBTQI intergroup, as well as Mental Health Alliance, and on Young Members Network for the EPP group. So keep it busy.
And just one more for you. It might be a little bit off topic, but someone wants to know about advice for social activism back home in the context of Black Lives Matter and Pride.
Yeah, social activism and where to go and how to get it. Is that?
I think that was the general question, and about what's happening in America.
I think what we have right now, and again around mental health even, is we have to educate ourselves. We have to look at not just news channels that have been giving and gifting us news. We also have to go to the core of stories. There is so much information out there. Just make sure you're briefing yourself. There is a number of resources, particularly around Black Lives Matters, that we would have seen over the weekend coming out, factual documentaries to watch, factual case studies and stories, groups. If you're willing to donate and fund, there's particular recommended groups out there. And just make sure, again, you're educating. I spent the entire weekend just reading stuff, trying to absorb factual and factual news, because I myself have blind spots. We all do, and it's important that you call out any sort of discrimination, prejudice that you see, and not just live in it. You have to be actively engaged in it.
And I suppose just a question for myself. I know you spent a lot of time in the States. What are your thoughts today on what's been going on over the last few days?
Yeah, my thoughts with it are a couple of points. One, what we've seen happening, it has been an unbelievable wave of greatness from activists, be it whatever color, whatever creed, whatever orientation, come to the forefront and take control of decisions being made out of their hands. What we also see then is a small group of people involved in looting and what has and damaging property. But what has been really refreshing is in from governors and numbers of police force and from business owners in certain cities in the US, that they're agreeing with the reasons why people are angry, people are annoyed, they are frustrated. It didn't just happen with being killed. It has happened over generations, and this needs to stop. From a political standpoint, I wouldn't have spoken out about the President of the United States in a positive manner up to this point, and that certainly hasn't changed over the weekend. June 1st, month of June is National Pride Day, Pride Month, and to shut the lights off at the White House when we need a leader at the point where we needed it, has showcased his presidency to a point where I hope people are waking up now. And this is it. I mean, over the whole weekend, I just kept getting frustrated at the fact that this is down to us now. Like I'm a US born citizen. I vote remotely in the US presidentials. I have done so for many years since living here, and I did so when I was there. But this is where voting comes in. This is where you get on the census, you make your voice heard, You make sure you're educating yourself on the leaders we are putting into not just the White House, but into our Senate, into our Congress, into governor roles, into police chiefs, into school boards, into our community. And if you're not seeing someone in there that represents you, put your hand up and get involved, because otherwise we do not change. Now, I've seen a number of great posts on, as a white person, if you see something happening from any person, but particularly another white person, call it out, stamp it out, stop and educate the person, so that perhaps it's a blind spot and you need to change that. We have a lot of work to do, and it doesn't just relate to the United States of America. It relates to minority groups, to people of color, orientation, creed, people from different cultures that want to develop, grow, and educate themselves and build their own life of opportunity here in the European Union. So it's not just a one country issue. This is a worldwide issue. I could go on, Kevin. I'll stop before I feed into time. Sorry.
That's okay. I know it was a little bit off topic, but of course it's all sort of linked in one way as well. We'll leave it there, Maria, unless there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, I just want to say thank you very much. Delighted that the EPP group and yourself, Kevin, are making this happen. For anybody who needs any support whatsoever, I hope one message you leave away from this conversation is it's absolutely okay not to feel okay. This is an unprecedented time we're living in. This is what the history books will talk about in many years to come. We are living in it. So don't be afraid to, or don't reach out for help when and if you need it. And equally, mind each other. Mind each other in the community, mind your friends, check in on them, use news and online resources in the best positive way. Get rid of the rubbish and the noise that might be impacting you in a negative capacity, and educate yourself, learn. Now we actually have time to watch documentaries like The 13th, to read books like The Life of Anne Frank, to really invest in the society we want to develop. And at the very core of that, of course, is mental health.
Okay, Maria Walsh, thank you for joining us, and everyone, thanks for watching. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Thanks.